And here we are. Call the neighbors. Call, as Prince said, call your grandma and tell her it's about to get funky in here. Except the difference between me and my soul brother Prince there is he was talking about some funky music, and I'm going to be talking about the funky world of spiritual life out here on planet Earth, as I so often do in these videos. Speaking of so often doing videos, boy, I had to go back and look, and I could not believe it. It's actually been almost 2 years. It was June of 2024. I think I saw my last video there on the Gospel of Thomas. And boy, I don't know what happened between, well, I do know what happened, but I was going to say I don't know what happened between then and now and why it took me so long to get back into making these videos. But because I have been intending to do it and get back into it for the longest time. And I was sort of thinking and planning and, thinking of different ideas and how themes and how I want to sort of jump back in, because I knew I wanted to do it, but I just had not quite gotten to the point yet where I felt like I knew exactly what I was going to say the minute I turned the camera on, or at least what I wanted to talk about when I turned the camera on. But that was up until this week. And then this week has just been, starting on Monday, this has just been one of the craziest weeks in recent memory, in the best possible way. And so that sort of sparked some inspiration in me, and I realized that I have so much that I want to say sort of about where I've been and what I've been doing, and the journey out here, what I've been up to, spiritually speaking. And then the turn of events this week that has just been so crazy. And so I knew that even though my long range plan of what I wanted to do on the channel had not come to fruition, I knew that I just had to get on here today ASAP and try to get this stuff out of my head and onto the video. And, the thing about the spiritual journey that we all go through in our lives, it's so, on one hand, it's so personal to each one of us, and so unique, obviously, because we're all individual, unique souls. But so many of the themes tend to be universal. So they are universal. And, you might have different circumstances, the details may change, but so many of the themes I find are universal themes that, all of us can sort of relate to in one way or another at one time or another. So I don't have a script here, but I have a few things that a few main points that I want to sort of get to help you guys catch up with what I've been up to here. So I'm just going to start talking, and hopefully I'll hit everything that mentally I wanted to get through in my head. And if I watch the video afterwards and it turns out that I missed something, I'll do a short follow-up. But here we go. Let's just start going here and see where this takes us. So let's talk about 2025. What a year last year was for me in my life. Talk about a roller coaster, spiritually, mentally, emotionally. Really the only area of my life that was not touched and that I didn't feel so much turmoil and upheaval and just confusion and craziness. And really the only area of my life that I didn't get impacted was physically. My physical health has been great. I haven't gotten sick. I can't even remember the last time I got sick. So thank God for that. I'm so grateful for that. My health has been fantastic. But boy, like I said, spiritually, emotionally, mentally, just wow, one thing after another. So last year was just a very challenging, just a difficult time. I mean, some of the highest highs and some of the lowest lows, and it just seemingly never stopped. Well, it did stop, thank God, eventually there on December 31st. But boy, there were some times during the year when I just felt like there was nowhere to run, nowhere to hide, because so much stuff just kept coming up, that I'm able to now see it in a different perspective, and of course see it in a spiritual perspective. And now here's what I will say before I really jump into this and some of the details, is that, in the big picture of life, whether it's my life as an individual or, the life of the world, the fate of the world, whatever you would say, in the big picture of those things, I am the most idealistic and optimistic person there is that you could ever meet. I don't have crises of faith in the big picture of things, but as you guys know, boy, when you drill down a little bit into some of the day-to-day challenges of life, man, I mean, I don't know anybody that doesn't sort of get tossed around by the waves. The things that challenge us on a daily basis, whether it's financially or family members or professional with your work life or personally with relationships. I mean, when you really get down to the daily part of it, it's not only universal, I think, so many of the things that we struggle with, but even if you do have sort of that ultimate faith like I do, and that idealism and that optimism that I absolutely have, you can really just get thrown around. And I think that's sort of what 2025 was all about for me, was just getting thrown around and you know, like I said, riding that roller coaster of emotion and just so many challenges. And, you know, one thing that happened for me was I finally hit a wall. I think I was thinking about November. I think right around Thanksgiving, I just sort of had in 2025 11 months worth. I'd had just about all I wanted or needed from 2025. And right around Thanksgiving, I just sort of shut down and closed the gates and retreated into my palatial estate here. I switched my office in my real estate office, moved my license to a different brokerage because I just felt like I just had to kind of close everything down for a while and retreat into myself and try to figure out what in the heck was going on and try to make sense of my life, you know, based on 2025, and try to really learn some lessons and do that difficult soul work that I talk about. Some people call it shadow work. I don't like that term shadow, but I understand. I think you guys understand when I say that term. You understand what that means. Really looking into, you know, regrets, exploring regrets, facing regrets, being honest about regrets, you know, whether it's something you did or whether it's something you said, something that, you know, a decision that led to this, which led to this, and, you know, what were the consequences of those decisions. I mean, that's the kind of stuff I was really having to just sort of go within, I would say, over these last 4 months or so, maybe November, December, January, February, and certainly into this month, before the tide really started to turn in a more favorable direction, that I would say. But yeah, back in November, I had just had my fill, and I knew that it was time to pull back and really kind of do that deep dive and do some of that difficult soul work. And so I sort of, I knew I needed a reset, so I sort of, you know, got back to my basics. And my basics for me, I've talked, you know, on this channel, if you go back and look at some of my older videos, you know, I've talked several times about some of the spiritual books that mean a lot to me, my spiritual teachers. I've referenced Elizabeth Burroughs and Professor Zake and some of these great spiritual texts that are my favorites that really keep me going. But once I sort of faced that fact that I needed a reset and I needed to pull back and really do a deep dive to try to get to the bottom of some of why 2025 went the way it did, because it was so challenging. One of the things that I did is I said, okay, I got to get back to basics. And going back to my spiritual teacher, Elizabeth Burroughs, I was reminded of 3 things that she taught me and taught her students. And this is where I sort of, you know, recalibrated myself. And I started right around New Year's, because I thought, okay, well, New Year's is a great time for New Year's resolutions. I'm going to sort of get back to my basics spiritually and, you know, try to build a new foundation and try to start over and just kind of wipe the slate clean. And let's do everything we can to make sure 2026 is not a repeat of 2025. And so the 3 things that my teacher are 3 among many things that my teacher had taught us back in the day that I really knew I needed to refocus on. Number 1, and this one, I had sort of fallen by the wayside about this, even though, as I mentioned a minute ago, you know, you go back and look at all my previous videos there on the channel, on this channel, and I've got, you know, several of my favorite spiritual books that I've talked about and shared excerpts of, et cetera, et cetera. And that was as you can tell from those videos, that was I was in the groove with that back there in 2024 when I was doing those videos. Well, somewhere along the line between 2024 and 2025, I kind of fell out of that habit, obviously, because I stopped doing the videos, and I think I sort of stopped my studying and my contemplation and my learning in that sense. And my teacher always said, study only the works of the great illumined masters. Now, that's a whole nother subject for another day unto itself right there. What are the great works of the great illumined masters? I've presented many of them here on the channel, but I was reminded, I could hear my teacher's voice in my head reminding me, study the works of the masters. And so January 1st, there, when the new year rolled around, that was one thing I really wanted to prioritize. And I have to give myself a report card to this date. What is it today, March 7th? I get an A+ on this because I have been very diligent every single day of this year so far. And it just turns out, and I don't know if, I don't recall if this was, it must have been a conscious thing, I guess, but I sort of started with one of my very, very favorites, the Tao Te Ching. And I started a routine where on January 1st up till today, I've been doing a reading and a contemplation of the Tao Te Ching in the morning, and then in the evening before I go to bed, I've been doing a reading and a contemplation of the Hu Ching, which is just another one of my absolute all-time favorites. Absolutely love that. So for whatever reason, I've just sort of felt the need in terms of when it came to making the decision of which books to study to get back into my regular studies, like my teacher always advised us to do. I for whatever reason, the Tao just spoke to me, and I thought, okay, that's really my most fundamental, big picture favorite spiritual teaching. And so that's where I started. The Tao in the morning, and a beautiful complement to the Tao is the Hu Ching, and I started doing the Hu Ching at night. So I give myself an A+ on that. Another thing that, number two thing that, and these are in no particular order, but just I wanted to mention these specific three. Another thing, number two here, would be the importance of meditation. Now, I had also, just like I had sort of lost track of my studying and my contemplation of the great works of the Illumined Masters, I had also sort of somewhere between there, back there from June of 24 into 2025, I sort of got out of the habit a little bit with my meditation too. But I think I did course correct a little bit, probably starting back in the summer maybe of last year. So it wasn't like, even though 2025 was extremely difficult, it wasn't like I wasn't meditating and I just completely dropped all my spiritual practices. Not at all. I started to slowly get back into meditation there last summer, I think, because, well, first of all, I did notice that because I was doing it so infrequently, it was increasingly difficult for me to really have good meditations. And when and here again, meditation's a whole nother subject for another video, and I will absolutely get to that at some point and do more dedicated videos just on meditation, because it is very important. But when I say meditation, and when I say, a good meditation or a bad meditation or getting back into the habit, really what I'm just talking about, to keep it most simple and most basic, just silence and stillness, just sitting in total silence and total stillness. So when I say that I was in a pattern there for a while where I noticed that it was becoming increasingly difficult for me to have a good meditation, that's what I mean, was I was having problems sitting still and being silent, because I was just, I had been so churned up and stuff that I was aware that I wasn't doing it, to the level that I know I've demonstrated to myself in the past that I'm capable of doing it. And obviously, if you're not doing it to the level, if you're not doing it to a certain level, then what's the point of doing it, right? There's no benefit. The benefit comes when you're able to really get into that space and really use that silence and that stillness and calm yourself and all of the things that go along with a great meditation, right? So that was one of my in addition to studying the works of the masters, I got right back into that on January 1st. Got right. My meditation, I'd already been sort of easing into it, but I really made much more of a commitment to it there in January. And I've been very good about that. Maybe not A plus like the studying and the contemplation, probably a B plus on the meditation. I don't, even right now, as of this week here on March 7th, I don't meditate every single day, but I've gone from, I would say here over the last few months since I sort of recommitted, I've gone from, maybe once or twice a week to now, almost every day. I might take a day or two a week off, something like that. But the real upside has been because I've renewed my commitment to it, I'm able to absolutely see the difference and feel the difference and experience the difference in terms of the quality of my meditation. Because, and that's what that discipline and that dedication does, is it brings you back to that center point where now, if I wanted to meditate right now, I could close my eyes and sit here for a second, and it would take me no time at all, and I'd be right in my sweet spot, ready to have a great meditation. So that has certainly helped a lot getting back into the meditation. And then the third thing that my teacher always used to say that I loved, and this is another thing that I was already doing at a pretty high level, or pretty satisfactory level, I should say, is getting out in nature and walking in nature and communing with nature and the birds and the bees and the flowers and the trees and the sun and the wind and the fresh air and all of that. And you guys already know, if you see some of these older videos on here, I've always said Professor Zeke, who was a great scholar in terms of the Essene Gospels, he was one of my primary spiritual teachers. So I've always been way into the communions and the nature part of the spiritual journey. That's never been an issue. I walk every single day, rain or shine. I don't care if it snows or if it's 100 degrees. I am out there walking at least once, at least a couple of miles every single day. And if the weather's great and it's not crazy, or if it's on a weekend when I don't have anything else to do or whatever, I can even get out there twice, and I'll go as much as I can, as much as my knees can stand. So that was sort of how I recalibrated and reset my system back there in January, was getting back to the daily study, both in the morning and the evening. It only takes 5 minutes, read a verse, contemplate it. I started doing that, as I mentioned, with the Tao and the Wahoo Ching. Got more dedicated with the meditation. That's been great. The walking was already there. Now that I think about it, now that I hear myself saying that, this is probably as good of explanation as I can think of why my health, even though I've been so challenged in these other areas, like I mentioned, spiritually, emotionally, and mentally, it's probably the reason why my health has somehow made it through unscathed, or relatively unscathed, here in this last year or so, because I have been outside breathing fresh air every single day, and walking and seeing the dogs and seeing the birds and the crows. And I've got a flock of crows now that follows me around like they're my disciples or something. It's just the craziest shit I've ever seen. But that's a whole nother story for another day as well. What is up with these crows? I mean, I'll have to do a whole video on that someday, because it is just Looney Tunes. But again, God works in the strangest ways. So, but yeah, I'll definitely get to that, because there's a story there as well. So that's what I sort of did. I knew I needed a reset. I knew I needed to recalibrate, and I just went back to my basics that my spiritual teacher gave me, and started applying those things on a daily basis. However, if you think for 1 second that me doing all those things suddenly turned the ship around there in January, or even in February, or even in early March up till about earlier this week, you would be sadly mistaken, because it has still just been a shit show, to be perfectly honest with you. And I hate that term. It's so overused. But, sometimes this spiritual journey, let's just be honest. I mean, this is funny, because what I'm about to say, this is the video that I thought I was going to be making, or this is the point I thought I was going to be making before this miracle happened this week, I thought I was going to be saying, you know what, folks, the reality is you can do all these things, like I mentioned with the studying and the meditating, and you can really, really sort of plant yourself and center yourself in the virtuous things and the good things and the sublime things in life. But that doesn't necessarily mean, even though you've got that going internally, or you're trying at least to get that going internally, that does not necessarily mean always, obviously, that the outer world conforms to that. Now, we're taught that. That's one of the New Age things. Oh, well, your outer world reflects your inner state. Yeah, but there's also a bunch of other stuff that's involved in that. We don't talk probably enough about just the most basic challenges that our souls face. There's karmic issues, there's relationship issues with other people, and lessons that have to be learned. And I'm all in on the learning and growing. Don't get me wrong for 1 second. If anything, I think that if I had to give a short and sweet answer to the meaning of life, that's what it is. It's not necessarily just, on the pursuit of happiness. It's facing that this is a school and we are here to learn and grow. We are souls here on a mission to learn and grow. So I'm all in on the learning and growing, but that does not mean that sometimes it is not a motherfucker, because it is. And life is just a bitch sometimes, and you can try to do all the right things. You can try to live to your highest ideals. You can try to be as true as you possibly can to your soul, which is what I constantly remind myself to try to do. But that does not mean that it isn't just going to be a bitch sometimes, because it is. This shit is hard. And let's just be honest. I was just talking about this the other day with somebody that I remember my spiritual teacher, Elizabeth Burroughs, or my primary spiritual teacher, I should say, just a lovely soul, an enlightened soul by any measure. And yet I saw my teacher suffer so much physically, with physical ailments, financially, just in so many ways. And it used to just really mess up my mind, because I just couldn't understand how this enlightened soul, this spiritual master, could suffer so much. But I also learned from not only talking to her about it, but just from watching it, and it's just a fact of life. The higher you evolve, the shit doesn't stop. It just gets more complex and more profound and more deep, and the life lessons get more intense and more important. And like I said earlier, some people call it shadow work, but for me, it's that the whole essence of the spiritual journey is the journey of self-awareness. And like I said, exploring. You have to learn those lessons and explore your regrets and look at yourself and be honest with yourself about, I had to face this, about where I sabotage myself. There's another whole video talking about how we sabotage ourselves subconsciously. So there's so much there, but this journey is hard, folks. It's hard. This shit is not easy ever, even during the good times, and even when you're on the highest highs. The minute you think nothing can go wrong, that's when the little roller coaster hits the top speed going downhill there, and the next thing you know, you're getting a whole nother life lesson in another direction. So, and that's sort of, even with my disciplines and my determination to sort of recenter everything here and recalibrate with the first of the year, the first few months of 2026 been pretty freaking hard out here on planet Earth. And I'll be honest with you, about a week ago, I was thinking to myself, I don't know how much more of this bullshit I can take. And I don't mean, I never, because I am the eternal optimist and the eternal idealist, I don't mean like I ever want to give up on life or anything like that, but I mean just in terms of my tolerance of how much bullshit I can withstand before the tide starts to turn. And literally a week or 10 days ago, I was just going, I don't know how much more of this bullshit I can put up with. I've just about had it. I mean, I'm consciously trying to do everything that I can uh, to make things right and get in the flow, uh, and be conscious about it and be self-aware, and I've been doing everything, but like I said, there's a little bit of a lag time there. It's not always instantaneous of what's on the inside creates what's on the outside. So there was a point there, week and a half ago, where I just thought, I have just about had it with this crap. And but boy, did I ever get a lesson. And here is the lesson. Now, I can't, because this is personal family business, I can't get really far into the weeds here as far as the details, the specific details. But I'll just say this. I experienced a miracle, flat out miracle. Not the first one. I've had other miracles in my life. I mean, there's another video I should do sometimes on miracles. But the real lesson here is, just when you think you can't take any more and it can't get any more, annoying, the lesson is that we are always loved. We are always guided. We are always protected. And ultimately, even when you think it can't get any worse and you don't know how much more you can take, the reality is miracles happen every single day. There is not a moment in the day that a miracle cannot happen, okay? So the first thing is just in understanding that miracles can happen at any time. There's no limitation on miracles. Now, when things were really hard, was I walking around thinking, oh yeah, my miracle's going to show up any minute? Hell no. It was a bitch, like I said, going through all this stuff this last year or so. But I do know, and I realize now, that what I really needed was a reminder. And boy, did I get one on Monday. And I'll just try to give you sort of the general, the absurdity of if I really got specific, I mean, you would see that the nature of this miracle was so timely and so ridiculous and so absurd on its face. And the fact, the path that this miracle had to take to get to me is so convoluted, that no human being possibly could have engineered this, or I certainly had nothing to do with it, and no other human being that I'm aware of could have had anything to do with it. If this isn't divine intervention, then I just don't know what is. But the nature of the miracle was, as I said, was financial. And just when I thought, I'm down to the bottom here, and we're transferring money from savings and, borrowing money from 401s and trying to just do anything we can to keep our heads above water here in my house with my wife and I and our family, a financial miracle showed up that just defies all logic and all anything, predictability, whatever you want to say. It was just an outrageous financial miracle, and so far out of left field that if I told you the specific details, you probably wouldn't believe me. It's just absurd, but it happened. And I'm not. The point of my video here is not to say that it happened because I did these certain things, or I paid my dues and I suffered last year, so now, all good stuff's going to happen. Although there is an element to that I'll get to in a second. It's not just that, but it's just understanding that I didn't create it, but I just sort of rode out the storm. And apparently, I mean, this is hindsight talking now. I'm looking back at the events of this week and looking back at this miracle and looking back at, earlier in 2026 and all the way back into 2025 and all the struggles and challenges I went through, and how difficult it was. And the only thing I can give myself credit for is just writing it out and just not completely giving up and completely losing hope. But it just takes time sometimes for energies to turn. Sometimes I see this a lot. Some of you may know that I'm kind of I have a, what do you call it? Not a hobby. I don't even know what you call it. But I like watching astrology videos. That's the truth of it. There's a couple astrology readers on YouTube that I really like, and it's sort of like my little astrology fetish that I get into astrology. And I don't know anything about it. Very, very little do I actually know about it. I couldn't tell you much at all. But it's fun to follow, and it's fun to sort of track not only the movements, of these heavenly bodies and how they affect us, but just sort of the timing of things and how things do ebb and flow and change. And boy, did I ever find that out in a huge way. I mean, in a truly life-changing way earlier this week, in the form of my little financial miracle. So, I don't know how much more I really want to get into about that right at this moment. I just wanted to get out sort of the basics of where I'd been and what I've been doing and what I've been going through. And I'm hoping that somewhere in this video, which I'm looking at the time now, IMC has gone on entirely too long. And I apologize for that. I always just start yakking and I don't shut up. But I just wanted to share that because I know there are, like I said, even though the details are different from all of us, the lessons and the growing, there are archetypes and there are universal themes that I think do sort of follow us all. And I'm sure somewhere in there, in the mix of some of the things that I've been going through, maybe some of you will hear or see something that sort of rings a bell in your personal life as well. And the moral of the story, folks, is just, like I said, just when it seems that all is lost and you can't take another second of this bullshit, that's when God, the universe, whatever you want to call it, the Tao, that's when the flow, the river comes by your front door and picks you up and you're in the flow. And the next thing you know, the most incredible things can happen. There's no explanation. Like I said, a human couldn't concoct these stories and couldn't come up with this stuff that I've experienced this week. It's just too absurd and too convoluted and too ridiculous. And as far as I'm concerned, it can only be divine intervention. And I don't know, maybe I paid enough dues there for a while. Maybe things are about to change here. Who knows? Well, let's see it, right? But what I can tell you is I will absolutely be doing a lot more of these videos from now on. I still have so much stuff I want to talk about. I got to get back in the flow here and learn to keep it short and sweet. I just do a terrible job of that, I know, and I am very self-conscious about that. And people have reminded me in the past, quit talking so much. I know. My book excerpts from some of my favorite spiritual books, I will be back doing those and sharing some teachings with you guys. Maybe we'll talk about some meditation. I think I mentioned that earlier. Talk about some meditation videos, some mantras, learn some mantras. We'll talk about all kinds of stuff, but I just was so afraid that I was going to lose all this stuff I'd had in my head. And like I said, about a week or so ago, I thought, well, I was going to be making that video to just say, hey, folks, hang in there because this shit is hard and you're not the only ones, right? The spiritual journey is not all sweetness and light. There are those moments, but sometimes it's just a mother and it can really wear you out. And it sure wore me out last year. Like I said, they're going into the new year, but new year, new habits, reset, hit that reset button. And things can turn, and then you get in the flow and you learn about yourself, you grow from your mistakes. Hopefully that's always my mission, my primary mission and purpose. Learn and grow your soul, self-awareness, not being driven by just, subconscious, unknown subconscious stuff that you're not even aware of, that, influences decisions, influences the things you say and the things you do. Self-awareness, man, it's a real mountain to climb, but that is why we're here, right? To climb that mountain, as my teacher used to say. Keep climbing that mountain, folks. Thank you for listening. Sorry I rattled on so long. I'm going to get out in nature right now. I'm going to go do my nature communion, my nature walk. Remind me at some point, I am going to do a video about these crows. And you guys think I'm crazy. This flock of crows that's been following me around. It's the craziest shit you've ever heard, but it's kind of beautiful and profound in the weirdest possible way. But we'll get to that in a future video. In the meantime, remember, meditate, as much as you possibly can. Silence and stillness. You only need a few minutes every day. I usually go like 20 or 30 minutes, but even if you're just starting out, 10, 15 minutes, if you can do 10 minutes, 15 minutes, nothing wrong with that. Meditate every day. Study the works of the great illumined masters only. Don't be reading People magazine. Go read the Tao. Don't be doom scrolling on Twitter all day. Don't be doom scrolling on Twitter all day. I get caught up in that sometimes. Meditate, study those great works. We'll talk more about that, and get out in nature. I'm going to definitely have to do some videos about my nature walks, because when I look back about 5 years of really dedicated daily walking, I cannot even tell you the healing. I mean, I can't even put it into words right now. That's a whole another thing that we will get into. Healing. Nature heals, folks. Nature heals. That fresh air. Even if you get rained on, I get wet. I get soaking wet so many times when I walk. Who cares? Come home, throw the crap in the dryer. That rain, the wind, and when it's sunny, that's wonderful too. But out there with the birds and the bees and the flowers and the trees, Professor Zeke reminds you, get out there and commune with nature. Back with more videos before you know it. I apologize for my long absence. Man, it's been a mother out here, folks. You guys know how it can be, but hang in there. Miracles happen every day. They can happen at any moment. They can happen in the most incredibly bizarre, profound, beautiful, crazy ways that you can't even imagine. Someday I'll tell you the whole story with all the gory details of what happened this week. Financial miracle. It can happen. I'm not even freaking joking. Money, let me put it this way. Freaking money showed up in my bank account and I had nothing to do with it. Money showed up in my bank account and I did not do a damn thing to make it happen. It just showed up right at the time when I most needed it. And I'm not even joking about that. Okay? See you, folks. Love you all. Namaste. The God in me bows to the God in you. Sorry I went on so long. See you in the next one. Take care out there on the spiritual journey. Be strong, my brothers and sisters. God's there with you. You're always guided, always protected, always loved, always cared for. Guides and angels all around us. There cannot be any doubt about that. See you soon. Bye. Okay, a little clicker. Clicker.